About a decade or a decade and a half ago, usually people who have used, anybody here use Windows XP? Anybody from that generation here? Windows XP. Some of you might have used, in those days when Windows XP and all that, if you were typing some important document, you had to be very careful your battery doesn't die out, because if your battery is dead, your document is gone, it is gone. Today in the world of cloud computing, you have no worries. You can just type on the cloud, you go back after 2 days, it's still there, nothing happens. But back in the day, you had to be very, very careful. Of course, after that, Microsoft introduced autosave. Thank God for it. It saved you the headache. And now we have moved from autosave to cloud computing, all of that. But imagine you're working on a very important document, your power is gone, and you're like, okay, I have to be careful to save the document, Control S every single time. But you're so lost in the document that you forgot to press that Control S back in the day. And then suddenly your power went off. Maybe half the document is just lost. It is irrecoverably lost. It is a point of no return. You cannot go back to it again. Thankfully, life is not like that. God gives us many chances to come back to the track. The decisions that we make in life, as important as some of them might be, God gives us second chances. God gives us time to get back on track. But still, the decisions that we make can have terrible consequences if we do not choose right. So the kind of decisions that we make and how we make our decisions is extremely, extremely important. And if we do not choose right, it can have bad consequences. If you make good decisions, of course, it's going to benefit you and those around you. But bad consequences, bad decisions can have terrible consequences sometimes. And and for some of us, sadly, if we continue to harden our heart, and choose our own ways, we might even reach a point of no return, like the king who we are going to talk about today was in. We might reach a point of no return if we continue to harden our hearts, and we might lose our faith, or our children might lose the faith if we continue to make such decisions. So, we are in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7, and we will see how, and today's topic is moment of decision. How do we, when we are faced with life situations, what is the thought process with which we go about making godly decisions in our life? And we're looking at the life of a king in Judah. So just a bit of context here. The last time, of course, chapter 6 of Isaiah, we've been doing, for those of you who don't know, I've been doing the series on book of Isaiah for a while now, and this is about 8th sermon in that series. And chapter 6 had 2 sermons, the vision of Isaiah and how God encountered him, and the second, so the first sermon was Holy, Holy, Holy in chapter 6, and the second one was the commissioning of Isaiah. And in that commission, God tells him, hey, Isaiah, I'm sending you on this mission. But the bad news is that the more you preach, the more the hearts of the people are going to be hardened. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. And their hearts are calloused. And Isaiah says, how long should I go on preaching like this, Lord? And God says, you are going to preach to a largely calloused crowd. And they are going to continue their hearts until they end up in exile. But a remnant is going to return, and their hearts are going to stay strong. And that is where we ended. And the next chapter, chapter 7, is where we will pick. Shall we read Isaiah chapter 7, verses 1 to 2? When Ahaz, son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. Now the house of David was told, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Shall we, in order to understand this, we have to look at this map. The next slide. We have to look at this map to understand what's going on here. So you see the green there in the center? That green is the whole Assyrian kingdom. It's a huge empire, right? And down here is Egypt on your left, left bottom corner is Egypt. So this is fully Africa, if you know your geography, and this side is the Arabian Peninsula and all of that. So Assyria wants to go all the way down to Egypt. And who are in the way? Three small kingdoms: Syria, Israel, and Judah. So, of course, the nation of Israel was broken into two kingdoms, right? Israel and Judah, after the time of Solomon. So, Syria and Israel are making a pact together, and they want to fight the Assyrians. And they wanted to strengthen this coalition, and they wanted Judah to join them as well in the coalition against Assyria. But Judah was not interested in joining their coalition. And when Judah denied, Israel and Syria, both of them wanted to attack Judah and teach him a lesson. And they wanted to make someone else king over in the place of Ahaz, who would probably be more allied with them. And that is the context, and that is why the king's heart was shaken. That's what it says. Now the house of David was told, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken. Now at the very beginning there, if you go back to the verse, chapter 7, verse 1, when Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, was king of Judah. Now wait a minute. What was the last chapter? I saw the Lord. When did Isaiah see the Lord? In the year that King Uzziah died. And who are we here now? When Ahaz, son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, the king of Judah. That means it is Uzziah's grandson we're talking about. So it's like, what happened in this one chapter? We suddenly went from, it should be his son we should talk about. Why are we talking about his grandson? You see, if you read the book of 2 Kings, chapter 16, you will see that this is a common practice in the ancient Near East, especially when powerful kings ruled, like powerful kings like Uzziah ruled. It was not uncommon for a son and a father to co-rule. So in fact, Jotham and Uzziah both co-ruled for a very, very long time. So if you read the book of the book of 2 Kings from 16 to 19, you will see that, and you calculate the age of the year, the age of the kings and also the years that they ruled. And if you match it up, you will see that Uzziah and Jotham actually co-ruled for a very long time. And it is only after Uzziah's death, about 2-3 years, Jotham ruled, and then it was his son Ahaz. So actually from chapter 6 to 7, not many years has passed, just hardly 2-3 years have passed, and we are in chapter 7 here, and Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. Now, we have to understand a few terms here in order, some of the names can be confusing. So I have put up a table here for us to understand some of the terms that Isaiah is using here. There are three kingdoms here, right? Israel and Aram are coming against Judah, and their hearts were shaken. So, who was the king of Israel? Pekah, son of Remaliah. Who was the king of Aram? It was Rezin. And what is the capital city of Judah? Jerusalem. And what is the capital city of Israel? Samaria. And the capital city of Aram is Damascus. And Isaiah is also using their nicknames or alternative names sometimes. The alternate name for Israel he uses is Ephraim. Why Ephraim? Because Ephraim was one of the biggest tribes. Ephraim and Manasseh got a large portion of the land when the land was divided. And that's why not only in Isaiah but in many parts of the Old Testament, Ephraim is used in place of Israel sometimes, especially the northern kingdom of Israel. And the other name for Aram is Syria. That is also a name he uses. Even today that place is called Syria, and even today the capital city Damascus is the same name. So these are some terms for us to remember. But what is happening here? It says that Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. Who is Ephraim? Israel. Good. You guys got it. Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. I mean, the two kingdoms are coming against him, and his heart is shaken like the trees of the wind, like the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. I mean, not very surprising. Even our hearts can shake when things that we don't expect come our way. For example, maybe suddenly you went through a financial crisis and your job is at stake and your heart is shaken like the trees of the wind are shaken. Or suddenly there is a big Health crisis in your family that you have never imagined would happen. It was an unforeseen sickness. Maybe suddenly, maybe you or someone very close to you has been diagnosed with cancer, and now your heart is shaken, like the trees of the wind are shaken. Or maybe more closer to home, you wasted so much time and resources and all of that, and suddenly when the deadline comes, your heart is shaken, like the trees of the wind are shaken. Right? It is not, but when our hearts are shaken like the wind, how do we choose to respond? Do we respond in faith, or do we come up with our own ways and means of going about it? And we will see what the king Ahaz did and learn some lessons from there. So God sends Isaiah the prophet to Ahaz, and let's pick it up from there, verse 3. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, go out, you and your son Shear-Yashub, to meet Ahaz at the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the launderer's field. Now, what is the king doing at the aqueduct? You see, Jerusalem was very impregnable city. It was on a hill, and it's not easy to conquer it. But some of the vulnerabilities was one of the things was the water that comes through the aqueduct. From on the east of Jerusalem, you had the Gihon spring from where the aqueduct comes. And when an enemy nation attacks another kingdom, one of the things they try to do is cut the supplies to the city, water sources or food supply, etc., so that the enemy kingdom is weakened and they can easily go and attack. So what the king is doing here is not surprising. He is going to strengthen reinforcements at the pool so that there is enough water supply to the city and all that. So the king is at the pool. Just imagine this. The king, along with his soldiers, probably is at the aqueduct trying to secure the city, and Isaiah and his son Shear-Jashub, probably a small kid, and Isaiah is going with this kid and he's meeting King Ahaz. And this is what is happening here. Say to him, that means God is telling to Isaiah to tell to Ahaz, say to him, be careful, keep calm, don't be afraid. Two kings are coming against you, but keep calm, don't be afraid. Do not lose heart because of those two smoldering stubs of firewood, because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram, and of the son of Remaliah. Aram, Ephraim, and Remaliah's son have plotted your ruin, saying, let us invade Judah, let us tear it apart and divide among ourselves, and make son of Tabeel king over it. That means they have a puppet king who they want to make king in place of Ahaz by defeating him. Yet, this is what the sovereign Lord says. It will not take place. It will not happen. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is only Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is only Remaliah's son. And these are the all too important words after that. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. It's interesting if you see the wording there. So let's see this picture. So Isaiah is going with his son to King Ahaz with his little boy. And his name is Shear-Yashub, which means the remnant shall return. I wonder if Isaiah and Ahaz had a bit of a conversation there. Hey, who is this boy? My son. What's his name? Shear-Yashub. A remnant shall return. What a chilling message there. Hey, King Ahaz, your kingdom is not going to endure. You are going to go into exile, and only a remnant will return. What a thing to tell to the king, right? I wonder if they had that conversation. We don't know. But what Isaiah is telling the king is, keep calm, don't be afraid. In fact, in the original Hebrew, it is, be careful to keep calm and not be afraid. That means the external circumstances were very, very tough. Two kingdoms are coming against him. But God was saying, hey, be careful. Don't be afraid. Be calm. Whatever happens on the outside, on the inside, you be calm. Why? Because the kingdoms who are coming against you, they are mere smoldering stubs. They're just fag ends of fire. There is no real fire in them. It's gone. It is burnt. They're burnt. They're spent forces. They don't have any power. They're mere smoldering stubs. And in fact, their destruction is not too far away. In fact, he says, within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. In fact, that's what happened after the fall of Israel in the hands of Assyria. A few years after this, the king of Assyria has taken some of the other nationals and resettled them in Samaria. So Samaria became very mixed. And that is why the Jews don't get along with the Samaritans. They hate the Samaritans because they're not a pure Jewish or Israelite identity because of the resettling. And a generation after that, that means 65 years, what Isaiah is saying here, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people because their identity is changed now. They're no longer the Israel carrying their pure identity. And God is saying that is their reality. Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. Who are you afraid of? They are not going to do anything to you. That is what God was telling Isaiah. And God was telling this very clearly. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. That means God is telling, hey, you got to stand firm in your faith and not look into your own means. You got to stand firm in faith. But sadly, he did not do that. He did not do that. We all, the faith is not about believing that God exists. That is not faith. If that is the definition of faith, even Satan is a believer because he also knows there is God, right? But faith is about, it is in the midst of the visible reality that you see, you trust the invisible hand of God that is behind and who's leading you. That is what Hebrews talks about. And this is what I like the definition that Sundar Krishnan gives about faith. It's very beautiful. Shall we read this? Faith is the absolute conviction that behind the visible reality, there lies an invisible reality whose nature is revealed in the Word of God and which holds truth to understanding visible reality. So strong is this conviction that it determines our responses to and our actions in visible reality. That means visibly you can see something. Visibly you can see that your finances are falling and situations are going to be very tough. But the invisible reality says that when you listen to God and do what He says, He will provide no matter what happens. The visible reality might say, you got to act fast, you got to do this, the world is going here and there, and if you don't do, you are going to miss out. But the invisible reality says that when I choose to trust in the Lord, He has my back, He has taken care of my life. So the visible reality and the invisible reality. And the invisible reality, the key to it is the Word of God, which holds the truth to understanding visible reality. And this conviction of understanding His Word is so strong that will determine our responses to and our actions in visible reality. And that is why Paul says this very beautifully in one sentence. We walk by faith and not by sight. We do not walk by the visible reality of our sight, but we walk by the invisible reality that no matter what the visible reality says, I walk by faith in God. And Ahaz didn't choose right. And this is what how it goes in verse 10 of that chapter. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. That means God is saying, hey, Ahaz, I am with you, man. And if for you to be sure about this, you can ask me any sign. Highest heights, deepest depths, any sign you ask, I will give it to you, because be sure that I am with you. Be sure that these kings will not trust me. That's what God was telling him. But Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not put the law to the test. Then Isaiah said, hear now, you house of David. Is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of my God also? Therefore the Lord Himself will give you a sign. We know this all too well. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. He will be eating curds and honey when he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right. For before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid waste. The Lord will bring on you and on your people and on the house of your father a time unlike any since Ephraim broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria. God was telling Ahaz, God was in fact offering him to ask for any sign, any big sign you want, you can ask. Because it was God was almost like, it is the final thing that God is saying, hey, I have the Judean kings, you guys haven't been trusting me, and now choose anything. That God was giving one last final big offer. But Ahaz's response was, and Ahaz's responses will tell whether he believed in God or not. And he chose piety, and he said, no, I will not put the Lord to the test. And it is actually a cover-up for his lack of faith. Because, you see, he's completely misunderstanding what Moses meant when he said, do not put the Lord to the test. The context in Deuteronomy, from where he is picking that, is that God has done amazing signs in Egypt through the plagues and all of that. He parted the Red Sea and brought them, and he's taking them through into the promised land. And they came to a place where there was no water, and they began to crave, and they began to challenge Moses, and they said this, is the Lord among us or not? That is what Israel said. And that is when Moses says, do not put the Lord to the test. And the situation here is completely different. Here, God is telling him to have faith in him and not be afraid. Those kings are not going to do anything to you. Put your trust in me. And God is saying, in order for you to be sure of that, you can ask me for any sign. And he's saying, I will not put the Lord to the test. It was a cover-up for his lack of faith. You know why? Because he has already made his backup plan. You know what he did? He went to the king of Assyria. You can read about this in 2 Kings. He goes to the king of Assyria, takes all of his treasures and gives to Assyria, and he says, hey, take care of these two boys. They're troubling me. So instead of trusting the Lord, he had his own plans. Because if he trusted the Lord, he knew what to do. He has to listen to Isaiah. But he didn't want to do that. He had his own means. He had his own plans. And God was saying, hey, will you hear now, you house of David? Is it enough? Is it not enough for you to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of my God also? I mean, he's saying that now he's not addressing Ahaz, he's addressing the whole house of David. That means he's saying that you Judean kings, you were supposed to bring in the reign of God, usher in the peace and righteous kingdom of God, but you have continually been going away from me, and now I'm like, I want you to be sure that I will do everything for you. I'm with you. And he chooses otherwise. It was a point of no return for the king. It was a momentous decision for him. It was a moment of decision in Judah's history. And the king failed. And it was a point of no return. He chose human alliances over divine assurance. And God himself gave the sign. He said, therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. There are two things he says there. Before the boy grew to an age of accountability, the two kings that you are afraid, they will be taken care of. They will be laid waste. And the second thing he says is that, hey, I will take care of them, but the Assyrian incursions will also happen on your land. That's what he said there in the end, if you have noticed. The Lord will bring on you, that is Ahaz, and on your people, and on the house of your father, a time unlike any since Ephraim broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria even onto Judah. Now, I just have a few comments on that oracle, right? Because we immediately, when we read that, we're thinking about Matthew, about Jesus' birth of Emmanuel. But there is a lot of meaning in the immediate context that we need to understand, right? Now, there are a few comments on that oracle. Number one, it was an invitation to ask for an extraordinary sign, right? Highest heights, deepest depths. And the second thing is that Isaiah uses a very interesting word there. He does not use the common word for virgin, which is Betula, nor does he use the word Naara or Issa, which is commonly used for a girl or a woman. And if you see in the next chapter, we will come to that, the fulfillment is in Isaiah's own son, where through Meher Shalal Hashbaz, and God tells how it is fulfilled. We will see that. But there is no clear indication of the fulfillment of Emmanuel clearly there. So what is happening here? So this word Alma, right? It means a woman of a girl of marriageable age who is a virgin. He and and why he chose that very rare ambiguous word is because the text, the oracle that he was giving, had a double significance. It had a single meaning, but a double significance. If you see that, it had a single meaning, but it had a double significance. Single meaning is what was the meaning of the text here? No matter what human plans were, as long as God is with us, we need not fear or be threatened. And the sign was a virgin conceiving and giving birth. And in the first case, the intention of the oracle was for the girl to be a virgin at the announcement of the oracle. And this woman, this Alma, this virgin, will go on to marry and have a child through Isaiah and fulfill the prophecy. But in the second significance, which is the ultimate fulfillment in Jesus, this time the intention was for the girl or the maiden to be a virgin at the time of giving birth. And that is why he chose a word, Alma, instead of Betula or a girl. He could have used the word girl, because when Isaiah's wife gave birth to a son, she was not a virgin. But at the time of the announcement, she was a virgin. Probably this was from his second wife, because he already had one son, Shear-Yashub. Probably the girl that he was going to marry, he is there in the crowd there, because that's why he said, the virgin shall conceive and give birth, signifying a particular woman that he had in mind. So this is what we call, the prophets use what we call single meaning but double significance, or multiple fulfillments. We see that in some of the examples. For example, you see this word, the day of the Lord, in the Old Testament. The day of the Lord could mean the coming Assyrian invasion. It could mean the coming Babylonian invasion. It could also mean the ultimate day of judgment as well. This is what the prophets use, the language of multiple fulfillment, or single meaning but double significance. Or the classic example is the Davidic covenant, where God tells to David, you will not build a house for me, but your son will build the temple for me, and I will be like a father to him and he will be a son to me. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Is that talking about Solomon, or is that talking about Jesus? It's both. That's what is double significance. In one sense, it is talking about Solomon, that is, he will build the temple, I will take care of him, he will be on your throne. But the eternal kingdom, everlasting kingdom, was ushered in by Jesus. And Davidic covenant is an important covenant in the story of God leading up to the Messiah. So this is what we call single meaning, but double significance. So here also in this text, the single meaning was that when God is with us, we need not fear. But it had double significance in the sense that in the first significance, it represented Isaiah's own child. And in the second significance, it is the ultimate fulfillment in the Messiah, Jesus, born of a virgin. And we will see that in Isaiah chapter 8. The Lord said to me, shall we read it together? The Lord said to me, take a large scroll and write on it with an ordinary pen, Meher Shalal Hashbaz. So I called in Uriah the priest and Zechariah son of Jeberechiah as reliable witnesses for me. Then I made love to the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. The same words of Isaiah chapter 7. Who has conceived? Isaiah's wife, the prophetess. The prophetess conceived and gave birth to a son, and the Lord said to me, name him Meher Shalal Hashbaz. It means quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil. It's a big name. For before the boy knows how to say my father or my mother, same thing we read in Isaiah, before the boy knows enough to choose the right and reject the wrong. The same thing here. Before this boy, Meher Shalal Hashbaz, knows how to say my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the plunder of Samaria will be carried off by the king of Assyria. And it happened exactly as what Isaiah said. Isaiah, after he bore this son through the prophetess, he gave birth to a son, Meher Shalal Hashbaz. And within 3 years, Damascus fell. And within 13 years, Israel fell. And 13 years is the age of keeping the law. By 13, you are expected, approximately about 13 years, you are expected to keep the law. And it is exactly as what God said. By the boy reached 12 to 13 years, the kingdom fell. So the first fulfillment of Emmanuel was Isaiah's own son. Because the very word, the wording, she conceived and gave birth to a son. For before the boy knows how to say my father and my mother. So it was fulfilled in Isaiah's own son in the immediate context. And it is just as God said, both the kingdoms were taken by Assyria. And Isaiah, in fact, calls the priest to record it as a witness. He calls the priest and he says, record this. That means even before the son was born, he said, this is what God is saying. Within these many years, these kings will be taken care of. And he records it at the time of the announcement of the prophecy. And it happened exactly as that. Within a few years, both Samaria and Damascus fell. You know, it's a very big fun name, Meher Shalal Hashbaz. Imagine his mother calling him to dinner. Meher Shalal Hashbaz, come for dinner. Sometimes if it is too big, she has to choose. What should I choose? Quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil. That's what his name means. Should I call plunder? Should I call spoil? It is a very big name for her to call his son. But the important thing is that the prophecy came to pass in Isaiah's own son. And we will continue on that in verse 5 and see, because there is one more thing, right, in the prophecy. The first thing was what? The two kings will be taken care of. And the second thing was what? The Assyrian incursions will also happen on Judah. Israel and Aram and Syria, God has taken care. But God also pronounced something else on Judah. And that is what Isaiah 8 verse 5 onwards. So I'll give a lot of practical implications towards the end, but first we need to understand the story, because without understanding the story, we cannot understand the practical implications yet. So just hold on for a bit. Let's understand the story clearly, what is happening here, and then we will talk more on the practical implications towards the end. So verse 5, the Lord spoke to me again, because this people has rejected the gently flowing waters of Shiloah and rejoices over Rezin and the son of Remaliah, therefore the Lord is about to bring against them the mighty flood waters of the Euphrates, the king of Assyria, with all of his pomp. It will overflow all its channels and run over all its banks and sweep on into Judah, swirling over it, passing through it, and reaching up to the neck. Its outspread wings will cover the breadth of your land, Emmanuel. Raise the war cry, you nations, and be shattered. Listen, all you distant lands. Prepare for battle and be shattered. Prepare for battle and be shattered. Devise your strategy, but it will be thwarted. Propose your plan, but it will not stand, for God is with us. And I wanted to look at the beginning of that, verse 5. Chapter 8, verse 5. The Lord said to me, the Lord spoke to me again, because this people has rejected the gently flowing waters of Shiloah and rejoices over Rezin, the son of Remaliah, the Lord is about to bring against them the mighty flood waters of Euphrates. What is happening here? So Shiloah is the spring that flows into Jerusalem, the Gihon spring, which collects into Shiloah, the pool. And in the New Testament, it is called Pool of Siloam. How many of you read that in the New Testament? Pool of Siloam. It's the same, Shiloah is the same pool. So God is saying that instead of trusting in the gently flowing waters of Shiloah, that means God's presence in the nation, and the pool of Shiloah was used for Davidic coronations of the king and all of that. And God is saying, instead of instead of the gentle waters of Shiloah, you are trusting in who? Assyria. The Euphrates is in Assyria. The river Euphrates is in Assyria. You are, instead of trusting me, that is what God is saying, you are trusting in the flood waters of Euphrates. And you know what? I will give that to you. You can trust in your flood waters of Euphrates. I will bring the king of Assyria. And this is what he goes on to say. The next slide. It will run over all its channels, run over all its banks, and sweep on into Judah, swirling over it, passing through it and reaching up to the neck. Its outspread wings will cover the breadth of your land, Emmanuel. In other words, what God is saying is that Assyria is going to take care of Syria and Israel, but he is also going to overflow into Judah. You rejected the gently flowing waters of Shiloah, and you rejoiced in Euphrates of Assyria, but that Euphrates is going to become a flood water and cover your land. They are also going to affect you. And that is exactly what happened. Is Assyria came and attacked Judah. They did not completely fall away like Israel. They stayed on for another 150 years till 586 BC. But they were reduced to a few cities. Assyria, they became puppets in the hand of Assyria and Egypt, Judah. For many years, they never really lived up to their kingdom of David. They became puppets under Assyria and Egypt. And it is important to look at those words there. If Euphrates is going to come as flood waters on you, and it will cover the breadth of your land, Emmanuel. Means God is saying, yes, God is with you. Emmanuel, God is with you, but God with you is not good news if you are not choosing God, if you are not walking in his ways. The land of Emmanuel. It's so good to say, hey, Israel, Judah, the land of Emmanuel, God is with them. But that land of Emmanuel is bad news if they do not choose God, if they do not walk with God. And I said the same thing in the Nungamakam Center when I was preaching. And after the sermon, my wife said, you can word it a little better. And she said, God with us is bad news if you are not with God. I'm saying that is beautiful. So credit to her for the line. But that's what is happening here. God with us is bad news if you are not with God. The land of Emmanuel swept over by the flood waters of Assyria. And he says, prepare for battle and be shattered. Prepare for battle and be shattered. Devise your strategy, but it will be thwarted. Propose your plan, but it will not stand, for God is with us. What a antithetic statement, right? God is with us, but your plan will not stand. God is with us, but your strategy will be thwarted. God is with us, but you will be shattered. Because Judah was not with God. God is with us was bad news because they did not walk with God. And so in summary, the first fulfillment of the oracle in Isaiah's son was a negative one. But if you read that, the flood waters only came up to the neck. It did not drown them completely. That means because God was with them in his grace, he did not let Assyria completely wipe off Judah. They stayed on for another 150 years, although they were just puppet kings. And even by the time of Hezekiah, they were just a few cities. They rejoiced in the flood waters of Assyria, but it ran over its banks and swept and swirled over Judah. So Emmanuel, God with us, is bad news if you do not trust the Lord and choose him. So that is the story, what's happening here. And now let's look at some practical implications of what we just read. First thing, short gaze or long gaze. You see, when Ahaz was faced with this difficult situation of the two nations coming, he had his own fix. He said, okay, the big guy Assyria is there. I will go pay him some of the treasures and he will take care of the two kings. Quick fixes and short-term relief over continued trust in God. If only if he chose to trust in God and continue to trust in God, we do not know how the history of Israel would have been, history of Judah would have been. But it was a moment of decision and he reached a point of no return. Because God pronounced the Assyrian incursions on them. You see, we are also a culture that want quick fixes than long-term solutions. We want do's and don'ts rather than deep understanding. We want bullet points rather than deep reflection. We want words of the day or someone sending a quick meditation to read through the day rather than spending the time and deep reflection. Or think about the whole abortion debate today, where I want to do whatever I want with my body, and I want to sleep with whoever I want. And if there are consequences to that, I want to do away with it. But how about waiting on the Lord and preparing myself for the man or the woman that God will bring into my life and build a great, strong family with them. Oh, that's too long. Short gaze or long gaze? Are we choosing a life of continued trust in God, or are we looking for quick fixes and short-term relief? Secondly, faith over religious piety. The king said, "Oh, I will not put the Lord to the test." He chose the right Christian answers, if you want to choose, and if you want to say that in today's words. He knew the right Christian jargons, he knew the right words, but he was far from true faith. Because it was very clear, though he said, religiously pious answer, it was just a guise for his lack of faith. He already made up his mind. And we can also have, it is possible to have religious piety without real faith. That means it is possible to come to church, to give your tithes, to attend life group and do all of these good things, but not have real faith. Now, when you have real faith, you will do all of those things, yes. But doing all of those things doesn't necessarily mean you have faith. And it is possible to have, as Paul says in the book of Timothy, he says, "For in the last days, people will have a form of religion, but lack the substance." So it is possible for us to have an appearance of religion, but without real substance. Because we can walk in religious piety and doing the right Christian things, giving the right Christian answers and all of that, but live without a life of surrender, where we surrender to the will of the Lord every single day and say, "Lord, not my will, but yours." And surrendering to Him and walking in faith every day. We can choose not to do that and just have religious piety. So it's important to understand, am I walking in faith, or am I just covering it in the disguise of religious piety? That's the second thing, important thing for us to understand. The third thing, we can dare to test the Lord by walking in His ways. It's important to understand this. See, Ahaz completely misunderstood testing the Lord thing. Let me give a few examples here. See, when you are doing the thing that God wants you to do and walk in His ways, you can dare to trust the Lord. Think about Gideon, right? He was supposed to go against the Midianites and he was afraid, and he asked God for a sign. And God still gave him a sign. Why? Because God Himself wanted him to go and fight against the Midianites. And he was having a lack of faith, and God gave him a sign. He did not say, "Don't test the Lord." God gave him a sign. Why? Because he was doing what God wanted him to do in the first place, but he lacked faith, and God gave him a sign to strengthen him. Or another example, take Elijah. He said, "I will show you who true God is. You gather the servants of Baal and the people of Israel, and I will call forth fire from heaven." You can say, why is he testing the Lord? You could say, when you read that. But listen to the prayer of Elijah there. He says very clearly, "Lord, may the people standing here know that I am doing all of these things at your word." That's what Elijah prays. That means he's not doing all that show out of himself. It was God who told him to do that. "At your word, I am doing this." And because he was doing those things at the word of the Lord, he could ask for a sign as big as calling fire from heaven. And that is why when we do God's things in His ways, we can dare to test the Lord. Or think about the book of Malachi, where God says, "Hey, you guys, guess why you have pockets with holes in your hand where you are not amounting to much? Because you are robbing me by not bringing my tithes and offerings. Bring your tithes, bring your offerings into the house of the Lord, and test me in this, says the Lord. Test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not open the storehouses of heaven." And so what the testing of the Lord here is about, when we walk in His ways, when we choose Him and walk in His ways, we can dare to test the Lord. Again, I don't mean the word test the Lord there in a negative way, but in the sense of we can have confidence. We can have confidence. It is the confidence that when you walk faithfully in His ways, you will taste the goodness of God. That means even when I might not be doing great, but when I faithfully give my tithes, God will take care of my needs. That is the confidence we can have in Him. It is, Again, do not misunderstand this with the health and wealth gospel preachers who say, give, sow in God's kingdom, God will bless you, He'll give you back. That's not what we are talking about. What we're talking about is when we faithfully do things the way God says, we can have the confidence that He will take care of us. So we can dare to test the Lord by walking in His ways, by doing what He wants us to do. And fourthly, be careful what you're trading. Be careful what you're trading. Judah traded the gentle waters of Shiloah for the flood waters of Euphrates. Now, sometimes what you think is good for you, then trusting the Lord, what you think is good for you might drown you if you do not trust God. Just like the Euphrates drowned the people of Judah. Now, you might think that, hey, this job is paying me so, and it's looking flashy, it will take care of all my needs. But then, it might take you far away from the Lord. It might take you far away from the faith. You don't have time for your family or church, all of that. What you might think is good for you, if you do not trust the Lord and ask Him if it is in line with His will for your life, those waters, the grand waters that you chose, instead of the waters of Shiloah, you chose grand Euphrates, but it might drown you. Or there's something that, I see when the whole marriage topic comes, where, people look at superficial things like, how much is he earning? How big salary does he have? He is settled in Europe or US and all of that. Instead of looking at the gentle waters of Shiloah, which is, how is his faith in the Lord? Will He take care of my daughter well or son well or whatever? But we look for grandiose. Do not look for grandiose, but look for a quiet confidence in the Lord, even if it is less. You look at the grandiose and think about all of this, and you think, hey, this guy is that, he's in Europe, he's doing so and so, he'll take your daughter to Europe, no faith at all, he'll leave her. You don't know what will happen. Right? So do not look for grandiose. Do not look for grandiose. Look instead for the things that are more important. Faith in God and things that are valuable. Again, not only in many examples, do not look for grandiose, but look for a quiet trust in the Lord, the gentle waters of Shiloah. It is much better to have a quiet confidence in the Lord than the grand appearance of things around you, which can distract you. You might think they are good, but they might drown you. And fifthly, last, God with us. You see, it doesn't matter what humans say. It matters what God says, because He is above human alliances and powers. And there's one verse there in Isaiah chapter 7, which I didn't read. And I want to read that here for us all. In that day, that means in fulfillment of the oracle that God gave to Isaiah, this is what He says. In that day, the Lord will whistle for the flies from the Nile delta in Egypt and for bees from the land of Assyria. So he's talking about judgment of Judah, and he's saying how God will call Assyria and Egypt against Judah. And that's exactly how it happened. For almost 100 to 150 years, Judah's kings were puppet kings to both Assyria and Egypt. But what I wanted to focus on there is, in that day, verse 18 of chapter 7, in that day, the Lord will whistle for flies from Nile delta and Egypt and for bees from the land of Assyria. That means even big kingdoms of Assyria and Egypt, God whistles and they come. That means even those big kings are at the beck and call of God. And God is telling Judah, hey, those big kings and kingdoms that you're afraid of, they're in my hand. And so what God is telling is, hey, Judah, I am with you. So you got to come to terms with me. Not about Assyria, not about Egypt, not about the nations that are against you. You got to come to terms with me. And it's the same with us. We got to come to terms with God and His holiness. That means the people of Judah were supposed to come to terms with this holy God. They were supposed to come to terms with this moral character of God and to align themselves to Him, and not about coming terms with Egypt or Assyria. Because even those big nations are under Him, under His beck and call. He can just whistle to them and they come. So it is important to understand when we are faced by situations and whatever that is around us, God is bigger than all of that. He is bigger than all of that. And the important thing is for us to come to terms with Him and be aligned with Him, and He will take care of any situation. There is nothing bigger than God. And so God with us is bad news if we do not come to terms with the moral character of God and walk with Him. Two cannot walk together if they do not agree on. And God will not agree with your not walking in His ways. You have to align yourself with Him, right? So God with us is bad news if we do not come to terms with His moral character and walk with Him. So we can be confident that He is bigger than anything and trust Him no matter what the situations in our lives are. So in conclusion, just want to put this all together and say, when we are faced with moment of decision, whether it is big decisions or small decisions in our life, we, instead of looking around us, we can choose to walk in faith and choose God and not have short gaze in place of long gaze, where we are looking for short-term quick solutions. We need not look at religious piety and cover up real faith, but we choose to walk in true faith, surrendering our will to the Lord every day. And when we walk in His ways and choose Him, we can dare to test the Lord, unlike Ahaz. And we must be very careful what we are trading. When we choose, when we make our decisions, we must not trade the gentle waters of Shiloh of a quiet confidence and trust in the Lord for things that might look big or grand. And finally, God with us. He is with us. But are we with Him is the question. He is with us. But are we with Him? And I want to end with this story, which all of us are very familiar. That several years after this incident, about 700 years after this incident, again, the Spirit of the Lord, He sent an angel to a woman, this time another virgin, to the town of Galilee in Nazareth, and said, "You will conceive and give birth to a son." And she said, "How can I? For I do not know a man." And God said, "The Spirit of the Lord will overshadow you, and you will give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus, Emmanuel." And today, when we face situations like Ahaz, when we are faced with decisions, big or small, we can choose to walk in faith and choose His word and His ways, because the greatest sign has already been given to us. God told Ahaz, "Ask for a sign, highest of heights, deepest of depths." He said he chose piety over true faith. Today we can choose true faith because the biggest sign is already given to us. What more do you need in order to walk in faith today? The biggest sign, highest heights, deepest depths. God brought forth His Son. He Himself came in flesh, born of a virgin. What bigger sign do we need to walk in faith? What bigger sign do we need to choose to say, no matter what comes, I will walk by faith and not by sight, because the greatest sign is given to me by God. That the virgin has conceived and given birth to a son. Emmanuel has come. I need not fear. He is with me. And no matter what situations, I can choose to walk in faith in Him and not in my own plans. Not with a short gaze, not by trusting in the flood waters of Euphrates over the gentle waters of Shiloh. Not by coming to terms with every other thing but God. No, I can choose to walk in faith because the biggest sign is here. God with us, Emmanuel.